Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked Fly Fly Fishing, and today we're going to tie the Silver Stoat in a tube fly version. It's an Atlantic salmon fly, but I don't see any reason why it can't work for steelhead as well. It's a very simple fly. I am tying it on a 2-inch plastic tube. That's what's recommended. Normally I tie on metal tubes, but I thought, you know what, we'll do a plastic tube for something different. And you notice I'm also using a mandrel. And you'll see that that comes with a couple of challenges. If you've never tied on a mandrel with a plastic tube before, make sure you always shove that mandrel in hard so it grips the plastic tube and the tube doesn't spin, because otherwise if that tube starts spinning, it's going to be very difficult to tie on. So let's look at our materials. My thread is a black 6/0 Vivus. The body is going to be Uni Mylar Gold Silver, size 10. The rib is going to be Uni French in a medium silver oval. And the wing is black Bucktail. It doesn't get much simpler, black and silver. So let's tie on. First thing we're going to do is tie on the rib. And get in the habit of holding your tube when you tie on to keep things in position, because it will tend to move around a little bit. When you're tying on the tube, you'll see it bouncing up and down. So you'll see me gripping it every now and again to keep it from bouncing too much. Now for the Mylar body. Now you want to keep your materials on top. As I've explained in a previous video, keeping materials on top of the tube is essential for getting it to ride correctly. If you have your materials on the bottom, it will want to flip the tube over, so your tube will ride upside down. I explained the effect in that video. It's called having your tubes ride level. Interesting hydrodynamic effect. Okay, now to tie on our Mylar. Try not to leave big gaps between the wraps of Mylar, and you need a lot of Mylar for this job. So I've taken off about a foot of Mylar to do this. Now, because that tube wants to move as we get closer to the end of it, this will have an impact on how we wrap the Mylar on. You're going to have a tendency to produce gaps. So take your time. Now, that wasn't my best job of wrapping Mylar. I can see a few gaps. That's typical. That tube goes like this as you're wrapping on your Mylar, and as it goes down, it opens up gaps. One of the challenges of using Mylar and wrapping on a tube that wants to wobble on you. Okay, now for the rib. Again, as the tube starts to wobble, it's going to change the spacing for your ribs, so try to keep control of that as well. Looks like I got barely enough rib here. When you're tying on these thick plastic tubes, you can easily run out of material. You're tying on material onto these plastic tubes. They're so thick, and when you're using a 2-inch tube, it's so long, you can easily run out of material like I was doing there. And you end up getting to little anxious moments as you're wondering if you're going to have enough to finish the wrap. Okay, I'm just going to clean this up. And we're going to then tie on our bucktail. Now you have a choice of stacking this bucktail or leaving it unstacked. That's your choice. I prefer to leave them unstacked for a lot of my flies. I do stack a few, but on a lot of them I will just leave them unstacked. I prefer a slightly more ragged look. So I want to get it about basically just past the knurling here. So I'm just picking my spots, trimming it off, bring my thread to the back of the head, pinch loop it down, couple of wraps, and then just spread it around a little bit. There we go. I'm going to finish that off. I'm going to bring your thread back and turn your tube upside down and do the other side, because you've got bucktail on both sides. Something to keep in mind, you want the lower wing to be a little sparser than the upper wing. You don't want the bottom wing being too thick, because it can cause it to spin. Okay, a couple loose wraps, then just spread that around. Now we finish off the head. Put a couple of soft wraps right at the back. That helps to keep the wing from flaring up. Now, you see we've got a little bit of unevenness in the wing. We've got a little bit too much on one side. I'm just going to use my thumbnail to move that around, just a little bit of pressure on it. You can get it to shift a bit. Once you've, of course, once we've put head cement on, that option is gone. Now, we whip finish. Tricky bit is to make sure that you're whip finishing on the tube and not on the mandrel, which can happen. Now for some UV and some top coat. There we have our Silver Stoat. I've tied this relatively sparsely. I don't like really heavily dressed flies, so I keep them, you know. I mean, if I was wanting to fish this in dirty water, I'd dress this up a little heavier. But, you know, this is going to be a fly tied on a plastic tube. You're not going to fish it deep. So you might as well make it sparse and fish it in clear water where that silver can sparkle in the sun. And as I say, I don't see any reason why you can't use this for steelhead as well as Atlantic salmon. So give it a try, the Silver Stoat. Cheers.